The blue lights of the carabinieri reflected off the ancient stone walls of Villa Fiori, cutting through the darkness of the Tuscan countryside like a jagged blade. Watching the officers drag my sister, Isabella, into the back of their patrol car, I didn't feel the sorrow a sibling should feel. Instead, I felt a cold, hard knot of realization tightening in my chest. This wasn't just a family dispute about money or jealousy anymore. It was the violent end to a conspiracy I hadn't even realized was suffocating us. Beside me stood Lorenzo, my husband. He held our sleeping daughter against his chest, his hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the betrayal we had just survived. To the outside world, and certainly to Isabella, Lorenzo was just a man who stayed home, a housewife who played video games while I ran the family vineyard and export business. But as the sirens faded into the distance towards Florence, I knew that without Lorenzo's sharp intellect and the hidden surveillance network he had installed, we would have lost everything that night. To understand how we ended up with my sister in handcuffs and our family shattered, one must look past the picturesque rolling hills of our estate. Lorenzo and I had built a life that many envied. While I managed the chaos of wine logistics and international trade, Lorenzo had quietly built a digital empire from his studio in the east wing of the villa. He wasn't just playing games. He was a high-level strategist and content creator, managing a massive online community and investing in tech startups. He made more in a month from his hobby than most men in our village made in a year. But he was humble. He chose to be the primary caregiver for our daughter, Sophia, because he wanted to, not because he had to. He handled the cooking, the schooling, and the emotional heavy lifting of our home. It was a modern arrangement in a very traditional country, and that friction was the spark that eventually burned our bridge with Isabella. Isabella had always been the wild one, the beauty who believed the world owed her a living. She had married a charming but corrupt real estate developer named Marco, a man who eventually abandoned her and their twin sons for a younger mistress in Milan, leaving Isabella with nothing but debt and bitterness. For years, Lorenzo and I had filled the void Marco left. We paid her rent in the city, bought her a Fiat when hers died, and stocked her fridge. We did this out of love, or perhaps guilt, unable to watch my nephews suffer. However, there was a poisonous influence entering Isabella's life that we were blind to. Enter Stefano, an old rival of my family and a predatory lawyer who had long coveted our vineyard's land. He had been whispering in Isabella's ear, fueling her resentment, convincing her that she was the rightful heir to our parents' success and that I was hoarding wealth while her useless brother-in-law lived like a king on her heritage. The breaking point arrived during Ferragosto, the mid-August holiday that is sacred in Italy. My parents had organized a lavish lunch in the garden, under the shade of ancient vines. The air was thick with the scent of roasted rosemary chicken and expensive wine. Everyone was celebrating our recent success. Lorenzo had just finalized a sponsorship deal that allowed us to pay off the mortgage on the villa entirely. My aunt, a sharp-eyed woman named Julia, who used to work as a private investigator in Rome before retiring, was the only one watching Isabella closely. While the family toasted to Lorenzo's dedication as a father and his surprising business acumen, Isabella sat in brooding silence, her eyes darting nervously to her phone. I later learned she was texting Stefano, feeding him information about our financial status. When my father innocently joked about Lorenzo taking the whole family to Japan, Isabella snapped. The venom she unleashed was calculated. She stood up, knocking over her wine glass, the red stain spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. She didn't just call Lorenzo lazy. She attacked his masculinity with archaic, sexist slurs, calling him La Signora, and claiming he was forcing me to work while he played with toys. She declared that no real Italian man would degrade himself by changing diapers. The insults were so vicious, so personal, that the garden fell silent. I expected Lorenzo to shrink back, but he simply stared at her with a look of pity. I, however, exploded. I detailed every euro we had spent on her survival. Every time Lorenzo had driven her kids to school when she was too hungover to wake up. I cut her off then and there, declaring she would never see another cent from us. But the horror lay in what happened after the exile. We thought cutting financial ties was the punishment, But for Isabella, it was the signal to initiate Stefano's plan B. Weeks passed in silence. My parents supported our decision, though they were heartbroken. Then, Julia, my aunt with the detective past, came to me one evening with a dossier. She had grown suspicious of Isabella's new friendship with Stefano and had made some calls. The revelation was chilling. Isabella hadn't just been evicted for missing rent. She had been evicted because she was funneling the money we gave her to Stefano to pay off gambling debts she had acquired at his underground clubs. Worse, Julia had evidence that Isabella had provided Stefano with the blueprints of our villa, specifically pointing out the location of Lorenzo's server room, where he stored not just his video data, but the private keys to his cryptocurrency wallets and our business banking credentials. The final confrontation didn't happen with a heartfelt apology, but with a synchronized attack. It was a stormy Tuesday night when Isabella showed up. She appeared drunk, screaming at the heavy oak doors, hurling stones at the windows, and demanding to be let in because she had nowhere to go. It was a performance. Inside the house, Lorenzo was monitoring the security feed. "Look at her eyes, Elena," he whispered, pointing at the high-definition screen. "She isn't swaying randomly. She's glancing at the camera blind spots. She's creating a diversion," while Isabella screamed insults about Lorenzo being a useless man to draw our attention to the front gate. Lorenzo's motion sensors in the back garden triggered. Two men, dressed in dark clothing, were scaling the perimeter wall near the east wing. Stefano's enforcers, coming for the data. Lorenzo didn't panic. The man my sister mocked for playing video games treated the situation like a high-stakes tactical mission. He immediately initiated a lockdown protocol he had coded himself, dropping automated steel shutters over the windows and severing the external network connection to secure the data locally. He handed me the phone to call the Carabinieri and Julia, while he tracked the intruders on his tablet. He used a smart home system to flash the floodlights in a strobe pattern, disorienting the intruders in the garden, and blared a pre-recorded siren through the external speakers. The intruders, realizing they had walked into a fortress rather than a helpless house, fled into the vineyards just as the police sirens began to wail in the distance. Isabella, still at the front door, didn't know her accomplices had failed. When the police arrived, they didn't just arrest a drunk woman trespassing. Thanks to Julia's dossier and the security footage Lorenzo provided, they linked her directly to the attempted robbery. Her phone, seized upon arrest, contained the text messages coordinating the raid with Stefano. The useless stay-at-home dad had just outsmarted a criminal conspiracy. The aftermath was brutal but necessary. Isabella is currently awaiting trial, facing charges of conspiracy and attempted burglary. Stefano was indicted for extortion and fraud. My family is scarred. My parents aged 10 years in a single night. But as I looked at Lorenzo that night, calm and collected, rebooting his servers and checking on our sleeping daughter, I realized that the man my sister called weak was the strongest protector we could have ever asked for. The wolves had come to the door, and the gamer had played them all perfectly.